I'll hopefully talk loud enough that everybody can hear. If you're having any trouble hearing, just wave your hands back there. But good to have the opportunity to be in Manitowoc. I was chatting a little bit with County Executive Ziegelbauer about how things are going here. And we miss him in the state legislature. He did a tremendous job for the many years that he served down there. But I know he's doing a good job with county government here. I've been to Manitowoc on a number of occasions before. I haven't been to this facility, which looks like a great facility. And as I was looking out, I noticed a few people riding their bikes out there. And it reminded me the very first time I was in Manitowoc was during a summer vacation when I was in college. I rode my bike from Milwaukee up to Door County and back. And came right through here and camped at Point Beach. So that was fun. I thought what I'd do today is just talk a little bit about the things we're doing at the Department of Revenue, and I'm going to focus on the things we're doing to try to help improve the state's business climate. We've had a number of tax changes in the business area, in the individual tax area, that we think are going to help improve the business climate in the state. So I want to spend a little time talking about those things. I'll talk a little bit about what we're seeing as far as the condition of the national economy and the state economy, and then just talk about a few things we're doing in terms of operating the Department of Revenue, and I'll leave plenty of time for questions and answers and for anything people want to tell me about, suggestions you have about things we should be doing in the tax area or in state government in general. So after the presentation, we'll have a little bit of time for discussion. As was indicated, I've articulated several key goals for the Department of Revenue, and I know there's often some skepticism when you see somebody coming to speak from the Department of Revenue. I've heard that people think that we have a secret motto at the Department of Revenue. The rumor I've heard is that people think our secret motto is we've got what it takes to take what you've got. But we're trying to be a little more user-friendly about things and take a taxpayer-friendly approach to doing our business. And the vision I've articulated is that we want to make tax paying less taxing in several senses. We want to reduce the overall tax burden on Wisconsin citizens, and we also want to try to make the tax-paying process a little more convenient, a little less stressful. We know that paying taxes is never going to be anybody's favorite thing to do, but to the extent we can make it a little easier for people, we want to try to do that. So, in line with that vision, I've articulated several key goals which were mentioned. Implement good tax policy with an emphasis on things that will help job creation, provide excellent customer service, operate efficiently. That's a necessity these days. It's probably no secret that we have budget constraints at the state level. Local governments have budget constraints. Businesses, nonprofit organizations these days, budget resources are tight all around, so we have to constantly be finding more efficient and better ways to do our work, and that's one of our goals. And finally, I want to maintain a positive work environment at the department. We try hard to give our employees the tools and training they need to do a good job for the citizens of the state, and we want to make sure that that's a priority. But today I'll spend most of my time talking about the first goal, the tax policy goal, and talk about the things we're trying to do to improve the business climate in the state. And I always want to say at the outset that we recognize that there are a number of different things that affect the state's business climate. Taxes are important, but as I travel around the state, I hear about a lot of different things that businesses look at when they're evaluating a state's business climate, when they're deciding where to locate, where to expand. And among the things I hear about are the factors I've listed here. One of the first things I often hear about is the importance of a good workforce. Skilled, hardworking people are very important. The importance of a good education system is frequently mentioned. Those are two topics that usually get mentioned early on in the conversation about business climate. But the importance of a good tax climate also tends to come up fairly early in the conversation. And then other things that are important: a good regulatory climate, reasonable regulations, a regulatory process that doesn't take too long. That's important. Infrastructure is important, whether you're talking about transportation infrastructure, roads and so forth, whether you're talking about energy, communications, all of those things are important to businesses. Quality of life in general is an important factor. Quality of government services is important, and stability of government finances is important. And I think historically, Wisconsin has had a reputation for having an outstanding workforce, highly skilled workers, good work ethic. We've been known for having a very good education system, good infrastructure, good roads and so forth, good quality of life. All of those have been positives when businesses have evaluated Wisconsin. But we've also been known for having a tax climate that's not as competitive as the tax climates in a lot of other states. And frankly, also for having a regulatory system that's a little slower, maybe a little less responsive to other states. So we know we've got work to do to improve in the tax area, in the regulatory area. And I think we're also very well aware of the fact that we've got to be constantly trying to improve in all of these areas. We've got a reputation for a good education system, but it can be better. The world is changing and becoming more challenging. We have to keep working to make it better. We have to keep working to provide the workforce training that employers want to see, and to encourage the students who are graduating and entering the workforce to be acquiring skills in the areas that businesses need. So we've got to work to be good in all of these areas, but we particularly have to do work in the area of taxes. So that's what we've been working on in the Walker administration. And I also try to emphasize that when it comes to talking about taxes, there are a number of different factors that are important. The overall tax burden is important to people, but the state's tax structure is also important. Do we get more or less revenue compared to other states from income taxes, from property taxes, from sales taxes? How does that affect our competitiveness with other states? It's important to talk about the taxes that directly affect businesses, such as the corporate income tax. But I find that some people think, well, if we're talking about taxes as they affect the business climate, it's only the corporate income tax. It really goes far beyond that. Probably many of you in this room are aware of the fact that a lot of businesses are structured so that they don't pay the corporate income tax. They pay tax on business income through the individual income taxes of the owners of the business. Businesses that are structured in subchapter S corporations, limited liability corporations, partnerships, don't pay corporate income tax, but the business earnings are passed through to the owners who pay taxes on the business income on their individual income tax returns. So corporate income tax is important for businesses that are organized so that they pay it. But the individual income tax level is important for businesses that are organized so that business income is taxed to the individual owners. And businesses also pay property taxes, sales taxes, unemployment insurance taxes. That's a significant expense for most businesses, and that's a concern. So we know we have to think about all of those taxes that directly affect businesses. And as I talk to businesses, I hear that it's not just the taxes that the businesses pay or that their owners pay on business income, but they also have concerns about the taxes their employees pay, individual income taxes and property taxes in particular. We've been a little bit above average in Wisconsin on our tax burden in those areas, and that affects businesses directly when they're recruiting workers in competition with other states. It affects the wage structure if employees are asking for more income because they want to cover their individual taxes. And it just overall affects the perception of the state of Wisconsin in terms of our tax climate. So all of these things are important, and I guess rolling it all together, we know we have to be competitive, and it made that point that it was summed up for me not too long ago when I was meeting with a major employer in the Milwaukee area, a company that has locations all over the country and worldwide. And the piece of advice they gave me was, they said, you know, we make a good product. We think we can charge a little more than some of our competitors for our product because it's a better product. but we know we can't charge too much more or we'll price ourselves out of the market. People won't even consider us no matter how good our product is. And the advice was that when it comes to taxes, the state of Wisconsin needs to be aware of the fact that we can't price ourselves out of the market. Our overall tax burden, the way we structure our taxes, have to be put in place in a way that we don't get into a situation where people say we just don't want to even think about locating or expanding in Wisconsin because the state is just taking too much in terms of taxes. We need to be competitive. We've got a very good product to sell here in the state of Wisconsin, but even so, the price that we charge to the taxpayers of the state needs to be at a level where we can be competitive with other states. So, with all of that as background, we've got several key goals in the tax area in terms of tax policy that we keep in mind. One is that we want to be trying to bring down our above average tax burden. We want to try to create business tax incentives that match up with those that other states can offer and that help highlight our business climate and highlight the fact that we're a good state to do business in. And we really want to be trying to provide broad-based relief, address a number of different areas where we have concerns with the tax system. So I'll talk about a few of the things that have been put in place in the last couple of years, and I guess I want to emphasize that we see tax relief as an ongoing project. It's not something you do once and you're done with. We want to be trying to make progress each legislative session. In the last two legislative sessions, we passed a major income tax reform initiative. That was in 2013, where we reduced rates and we increased certain deductions. I'll talk in more detail about that. And we've put in place a number of important new business tax incentives, particularly a manufacturing and agriculture tax credit. I'll talk in a little more detail about that. Overall, we've had tax reductions of about $1.4 billion over the last two legislative sessions, and this just graphically demonstrates roughly a $400 million decrease in taxes in the 2011 session, and then another roughly $1 billion of cuts in this legislative session. And this chart may be a little tough to read, but it just sums up some of the detail of where those tax cuts took place. The biggest single reduction was the rate cuts for individual income taxes, about $650 million. And then the manufacturing and agriculture credit, that's having an impact in terms of tax reduction of about $100 million in the current budget cycle. So that's another significant one. And there's a few others listed that I'll touch on as I go through the presentation here. I'll talk first about the income tax reform initiative. When Governor Walker submitted the budget bill to the legislature in February, we included a very significant income tax rate reduction proposal in that bill. And there were several reasons for this. First of all, in terms of our standing compared to other states, we're relatively far above the national average when it comes to income taxes. Prior to passing this income tax reduction initiative, we were about 25% above the national average in terms of individual income tax burden. We're also about 25% above the national average for property taxes. We're about average for corporate income taxes. We're about 15% below average for sales taxes because we have a lower sales tax rate here in the state of Wisconsin than most states do, and fewer local option sales taxes than most states do. So we want to try to work on both individual income taxes, property taxes, to get closer to the national average. The other thing we found when we looked at comparing us to other states is we were most out of line compared to other states in the middle income brackets. We actually have several programs, a homestead tax credit program that offsets property taxes, and an earned income tax credit program that are available to lower income individuals. So we actually rank in the bottom half of states in terms of tax burden on lower income individuals, below about $25,000 of income. But after that, people's income tax burden compared to other states rose pretty quickly as we looked at the income tax code. So we said we really want to focus on income tax relief, and within that, put as much emphasis as possible on middle class income tax relief. So we had a proposal where we reduced income tax rates for all tax brackets. The reductions were largest for middle class taxpayers, and overall it provided broad-based relief, focused most heavily on middle class relief. The governor, when he proposed the budget bill, proposed a tax reduction of roughly $350 million through rate reduction. As we went through the budget process, it turned out the economy was performing a little better than we projected. There were revenues that were coming in that were above the initial projections. So the legislature actually bumped up the reduction to $650 million. And this just shows at the different rate levels what the before and after tax rates were. Our bottom rate used to be 4.6%. We dropped it to 4.4%. 6.15% rate went down to 5.84. We had two rates that applied to most middle class taxpayers, 6.5 and 6.75. That's been reduced to 6.27, and our top rate has gone from 7.75 to 7.65. Middle class taxpayers pay their income taxes based on the third and to some extent the fourth rates there. So reducing those rates are what provided a lot of middle income tax relief. And this chart just shows in terms of dollar relief by income bracket where the relief went. And you can see, you maybe can't read all the fine print there, but basically the biggest reductions in terms of dollars saved and in terms of percentage reductions were in the middle income ranges from about 30,000 of income up to 100,000 or a little above. So we think that's going to be something that will be well received by people. People will see this relief when they file their 2013 income tax returns in early 2014. A typical family, a family of four, median family income of about 80,000, will see relief of $345 over 2 years. So hopefully that's something that people will appreciate and something that we want to continue to work on in the future, but people will see a tangible indication that the trend in terms of income tax is to get more competitive, more in line with other states. One other thing I wanted to mention in the income tax area is that we've also increased a few deductions that will benefit people depending on their particular circumstances. So the rate cuts will benefit all income taxpayers at every level. And in addition to those, there are some deductions that have been newly implemented or increased in the last 2 budget cycles. Maybe the most important from the point of view of a business audience is that we created a state tax deduction for health savings accounts. Contributions to health savings accounts were previously deductible at the federal level and in most other states, but not in Wisconsin. And I think this is important. A lot of self-employed people, realtors, people of that nature meet their health care needs by setting up health savings accounts. A lot of small businesses work with their employees to have these accounts set up. So for self-employed individuals, for small businesses, I think that was very well received. Average tax savings of about $423 for people who have health savings accounts over this 2-year period. We increased the deductibility of health insurance premium payments for people who are in a situation where you're working for an employer, the employer pays part of the premium, you pay part of the premium. You can now deduct 100% of the part of the premium that you pay. This was something that was initially passed in 2007 to be on a glide path to get to 100% deductibility, but that implementation schedule had been suspended in 2009. We put it back in place, and we're now at 100% deductibility for employees who are paying their own health insurance premiums. We increased a child care deduction that can be taken by people with children under the age of 13. who have children in child care, average tax savings of $300 over 2 years for that. And the legislature also added in the budget bill a new deduction for K-12 private school tuition payments. Those tuition payments are deductible up to $4,000 per child through grade 8 and up to $10,000 per child for grades 9 through 12. So that's something for people who are in that situation will provide some further reductions in their taxes. Question?
Is that going to be annually?
Yes, that will be each year. All of these things are in place permanently, all the things I talked about. The other thing we did, one of the things I guess I hear a lot about from businesses and individuals is, can you simplify the tax code? It gets pretty complicated. So that is a goal of ours, and one of the things we can do to help in that regard is to make our tax code consistent with the federal code as much as possible. So we've really put a big effort into that in the last 2 sessions, and we have federalized, I think by now it's somewhere more than 70 different changes to make our tax code consistent with the federal code. So we're making progress there. We've eliminated some credits and deductions that were very little used, and as I mentioned before, we've condensed 5 tax brackets down to 4. So those are the things that were taking place on the individual income tax side. I'll talk a little bit now about some of the things we're doing in the business tax area, and brought along some brochures which we can pass around here, just giving a concise summary of both our existing, or some of our existing business tax incentives along with some of the new ones that have been put in place. And I should emphasize, this is just kind of a very quick summary of things. If you want more detailed information, go to the Department of Revenue website, and if you need more detailed information after looking at the information on the website, just give us a call. Give our customer call center a call, and we've got technical specialists in different areas who can help explain things that people have an interest. But for a number of years, we've had some significant business tax incentives in place, and I've listed just a few of them. Since the 1970s, manufacturing machinery and equipment has been exempt from the property tax. That's not true in every state, so that's important for manufacturing businesses. For several decades, we've had a research and development credit available to help people defray some of the costs of research. And in this budget bill, that was extended from traditional corporations to also apply to corporations that pay tax on a pass-through basis that I was talking about earlier. So that's been made more broad-based in the most recent budget bill. 10 years ago, on a bipartisan basis, the legislature created and the governor signed an angel investment credit designed to encourage angel investors, people who have a net worth that enables them to invest in new businesses, to encourage them to invest in startup businesses here in the state of Wisconsin. We know that we need to encourage entrepreneurial activity. We know we need to have a constant flow of new businesses being formed to make sure we have growing and healthy employers in the future, and we want to encourage startup businesses. This was a very significant change that was passed back in 2003 to help encourage that sort of activity. I think it's been very well received. It's encouraged the growth of a number of angel investment networks around the state. So those are just 3 of the significant business tax incentives that have been in place on an ongoing basis. But we wanted to do more, both to remain competitive with other states, and I think to kind of highlight the fact that Wisconsin is moving through a business-friendly environment, to highlight the fact that we want to be doing everything possible to encourage businesses to expand. So we've put a number of other business tax incentives in place in the last 2 legislative sessions, and I'll talk in detail about the manufacturing and agriculture tax credit. The one other one I wanted to highlight is a new investment tax incentive. And this is a provision that says if you have money that you invest in a Wisconsin-based business, and this applies to investments starting in 2011. Invest in a Wisconsin-based business, keep your money there for at least 5 years. When you go to sell that investment, you won't have to pay any capital gains tax on the gain. So it'll work to add to the angel investment credit to provide additional motivation, I guess, for people to look at investments in Wisconsin-based businesses as an attractive thing. So we want to encourage people to invest in Wisconsin businesses, particularly startup businesses, and we want to build on the strengths that we have in terms of our existing businesses in the state of Wisconsin, and that's what the manufacturing and ag tax credit is intended to do. And we really want to get the word out about the manufacturing and ag credit. It's something that will make us one of the best states in the country from a tax point of view for manufacturing and agriculture businesses. So I'll spend just a few minutes talking about some of the details of the manufacturing and ag credit. Basically, it's a tax credit that applies to reduce the taxes that are imposed on income derived from manufacturing and ag activity in the state of Wisconsin. It's phased in over a 4-year period, starts in the current tax year 2013, and by tax year 2016, after 4 years of being phased in, it will provide a credit of 7.5% against the taxes that are imposed on income derived from manufacturing and ag activities here in the state of Wisconsin. Now this will be a significant offset. Our corporate income tax rate for corporations that pay taxes on business income through the corporate income tax, our corporate income tax rate is a flat 7.9%. For businesses that pay tax, where the owners pay tax on the business income on a pass-through basis, our top tax rate is now 7.65%. And if you're not in the top tax bracket, you'll be paying tax at a lower rate than that. So a 7.5% offset against a rate that's 7.9% for corporations or 7.65% maximum and under 7% in a lot of cases for businesses that are paying tax on a pass-through basis is clearly a very significant offset. For traditional corporations, your tax on manufacturing and ag income here in the state of Wisconsin will effectively be 0.4% as of 2016. So it will make us a very attractive state for manufacturing and ag businesses from a tax point of view. The rationale for this is that manufacturing and agriculture have traditionally been the twin drivers of Wisconsin's economy. We're one of the 2 most manufacturing intensive states in the country, along with Indiana. 1 out of every 6 workers here is employed in manufacturing, and it's an even bigger share of the state's state domestic product. About 20% of the state's state domestic product, the state equivalent of GDP, is from manufacturing. So we want to promote manufacturing, build on our historic strengths in this area, and we're obviously a state with a very strong agricultural heritage as well. And manufacturing ag are the businesses that predominantly send exports outside of the state to other states, to other countries, bring money into the state. When they bring money into the state, it has a tremendous multiplier effect. And if manufacturing and ag are thriving or bringing money into the state, we're going to have good activity throughout our economy. Construction, real estate, retail, hospitality, professional services, on down the line. All of those sectors will thrive if manufacturing and ag are thriving. So those are the sectors that produce the multiplier effect that helps the rest of the economy. And as I said, this is all part of our overall broad-based effort, but we think it's something that will be a high visibility tax incentive to businesses and will allow us to say, you know, not only do we have a great workforce, great education system, great quality of life, for manufacturing and ag businesses, we also have one of the best, one of the most competitive tax structures in the country.
Let me ask an Econ Dummy 101 question. Why won't or why can't other states do something similar?
Well, they could. They could. It's kind of I guess it's just an ongoing competition with other states. And We see states that offer different types of incentives. We know we have to be at least competitive, at least be able to offer incentives of our own and to be able to tout our tax structure. There are some things we can't do in the state of Wisconsin that other states can do. Other states can offer property tax abatements to businesses, for instance. Say, come to this state, we won't impose any property taxes on you for X period of years. Because we have a uniformity clause saying property taxes have to be uniform on everybody, we can't do that. We can do things like exempting manufacturing machinery and equipment. You can completely exempt property, even though you can't tax it at a different rate or tax it for different periods of time compared to other states. So we can do things like the manufacturing machinery and equipment exemption and things like this that will help us stack up against states that maybe have some other things that they can tout. But I guess from my point of view, we know that we stack up well in workforce and education, quality of life, as I said. We need to be able to stack up well in terms of taxes, and this will help us do it. But states are always emulating each other. I talked about the angel investment credit. We passed it in 2003. One thing that was interesting was that Minnesota recently passed, 2009 I think it was, passed a similar credit. One of the reasons they did it, they said this is proving to be effective in encouraging more startup businesses in Wisconsin. We got to keep up. So that kind of thing does go on, but we're trying to make sure that we're competitive and that we've got things that we can talk about in terms of our advantages. Just a few quick words about how the credit works. Basically, people can take the credit to the extent that their income comes from manufacturing and ag activity here. So if a company does all of its manufacturing here, it can take the credit against the taxes on all of its income that's taxed in Wisconsin. If it does 50% of its manufacturing here, 50% elsewhere, it can take the credit against 50% of its income. If it's 80% manufacturing, 20% retail, it can take the credit against the 80% of the income that comes from manufacturing. So that is just the basics about how it works. But again, as we get the word out, people are very encouraged to see this as something that is a very tangible evidence of how we're improving the tax climate. I'll touch on a few other subjects before opening it up for the discussion period, but one thing I just wanted to mention briefly is property tax, because we know that's important to people. There have been a number of things that have been done in the last couple of budget bills that have resulted in a situation where we're going to see flat property taxes, relatively flat on the typical home in the state of Wisconsin over a 4-year period. The red line there is the previous trend for taxes on homes in Wisconsin. The blue line to the right of the vertical line is what we project will be property taxes on a typical home in the state of Wisconsin based on the actual tax bills that were sent out in December of 2011 and December of 2012, and that we project for the next 2 rounds of property taxes. And to a large extent, this has been accomplished by passing some provisions that put limits or tighten up the limits on how much local governments, school districts, county governments can charge. And we know that this has made for some very difficult decision-making at the local level. Certainly County Executive Ziegelbauer could give you a lot of details on that. It's meant that people at the local level have certainly had to make some tough decisions. As people undoubtedly know, we've made some changes in the rules that apply to bargaining with public employee workforces in the state that we think have given local governments a much greater range of tools to enable them to respond to those the changes imposed by those limits. But I think the payoff for the average property taxpayer is very welcome, because the payoff is stable property taxes rather than that upward slope that was in place previously. So all of those things are part of our tax relief efforts, and as I said at the outset, we see tax relief as an ongoing effort, something that we hope to do more of in the future as the economy improves and the resources are there to do additional rounds of tax decreases. I'll shift gears a little bit here and just talk briefly about our budget situation and about what we see in the economy. And it kind of ties back to what's going on in terms of the budget initiatives we've implemented and what will be possible in the future. And again, the better we can do in terms of getting the state's economy going, in terms of stabilizing the state's finances, the more we'll be able to do things in terms of tax reduction, in terms of other initiatives that will provide resources in priority areas at the state level. Just a quick recap of the last couple of budget cycles. People will probably recall in January of 2011 when Governor Walker took office, the state was facing a projected $3.6 billion budget deficit. The gap between revenues that were coming in under the tax code in place at the time and the spending that would have taken place under the prior spending trends. Basically what the governor said is, I'm not going to raise taxes to eliminate that deficit. I don't want to engage in mass layoffs of state employees. I don't want to see dramatic service cuts. So what he proposed was a plan that would ask state employees and local employees to share in more of the costs of retirement benefits and health care benefits, and that would change the work rules that apply to public employee workforces to give governments more flexibility to manage their operations. And clearly some decisions that generated a lot of discussion, a lot of debate, a lot of controversy. But I think looking back from 2+ years down the road, we can see the benefits of those decisions. We got through the 2011-13 budget cycle without any tax increases at the state level, in fact with some targeted tax cuts that I've talked about, without dramatic rises in property taxes. Property taxes were kept stable, as that prior slide shows, without mass layoffs of public employees at the state or local level, and without any significant cuts in services. And I think the people of the state, looking back, appreciate the fact that those tough decisions have put the state in a pretty good situation as we look at things now. Right now, as we look back on the budget cycle that ended, the 2-year budget cycle that ended in June of 2013, we know that we will end that budget cycle with approximately a $600 million positive ending balance. And I say approximately because the final accounting is being done, the final tally is published in October, but the ending balance will be roughly a positive $600 million, and that compares with the projected $3.6 billion deficit if nothing had been done to address things that were in place back in early 2011. The other thing that we've done that I think is very good for the state's finances is put some more money into the state's stabilization fund. There's a provision in state law that says if revenues come in at a rate that was greater than projected when the budget passed, half of the additional revenues have to go into the state's stabilization fund, which in early 2011 had virtually no money in it. Because the economy has done a little better than we projected, revenues have come in better than projected, we've put $261 million into that stabilization fund over the last 2 years. And that's a good thing in terms of the state's ability to weather any economic downturns that might occur in the future. So, with all of that, when we entered the state's current budget cycle at the start of 2013, we were in a much better position than in 2011. We weren't in crisis management mode anymore. We didn't have to say the first priority is figuring out how to cope with a very large projected deficit. We could focus on things like tax cuts, on things that would provide spending increases for some of the priority programs that the people of the state think are important. And that's really been the story of the 2013 budget. It was a budget that had the significant tax cuts I talked about. It had funding increases for K-12 education, for technical college education, for the Medicaid program, for health care for low individuals, for programs at the local level. We had the ability to provide additional resources to a number of priority areas. And the budget that was passed projects a positive ending balance at the end of the current two-year budget period in June of 2015. Now, all of that is contingent on the forecasts that we've made about how revenues will come in, which are based on forecasts we look at in terms of the national and state economy. So just wanted to say a few words about the things we're seeing and that are being, I guess, that we see at both the state and national level. We do our revenue estimates based on a forecast of national economic activity that we get from a forecasting firm called Global Insight. It's a major national firm that's used by more than half the states for forecasting purposes. And they provide us with a national economic forecast. We translate that at the Department of Revenue into a Wisconsin-specific economic forecast, and then use that to project our revenues. But currently what Global Insight is saying is that the fundamentals of the national economy are steadily improving. The housing market is coming back. Consumers are gradually increasing spending, particularly in the auto area. Business investment is growing, and we're seeing a lot of benefits to the U.S. energy boom in terms of jobs created, in terms of products that are being purchased, a number of which are manufactured right here in Wisconsin, and in terms of lower costs for energy as an input for American manufacturers. Global Insight does caution, we've got concerns about how things like the federal budget are going to be resolved. So that's an uncertainty, and there's lots of uncertainty that employers are facing because of the implementation of the Affordable Care Act. So those are, I guess, cautionary notes, but overall things seem to be steadily improving. And they're improving in Wisconsin. We're seeing steady job gains in the state. Our unemployment rate is a little under 7%, below the national average. Manufacturing and tourism, two important sectors of the economy, are adding employment at above average rates. Our private employment growth since the start of the recession has been better than most of our neighbors in the Great Lakes area. And we see initial unemployment claims coming down. So that's an indication that the unemployment rate will continue to get better. Housing is reviving in the state of Wisconsin. Building permits are increasing. So the positive things that are being talked about at the national level are taking place here, and maybe even to a greater extent in the state of Wisconsin. Looking to the future, Global Insight says that they see the fundamentals for solid growth in the U.S. economy being in place for the next 2 calendar years. They see employment continuing to increase, even though there will continue to be some fiscal tightening in their view at the federal level. And I guess the only cautionary note in all this is that there are always risks out there from national and international events. Again, the continued uncertainty about what's going to happen with the federal budget, the Affordable Care Act, are creating a little bit of a drag, and certainly tensions in the Middle East aren't helpful. There is some slowing down of growth in emerging market economies, and basically in the 2009, 10, 11 period, while we were in a recession, Europe was in a worse recession. China, India, Brazil, other emerging market economies were doing very well. And that, all of that is important these days. We're so interconnected. A lot of Wisconsin businesses are selling products that are being purchased in those economies. Maybe the best example is Caterpillar and Joy Global in the Milwaukee area, the 2 biggest manufacturers of mining equipment in the world, and they manufacture the bulk of it in the Milwaukee area. They have suppliers throughout the state of Wisconsin. Their production is being sold not only here in the United States, but to Australia, to Brazil, to places that are producing the commodities that are being used in China, India, and other places. So as those economies slow down a little bit, there's less demand, relatively speaking, for some of the products we manufacture here. So it all ties in. And there is, the forecast that we see from Global Insight says there is some slowing down of the growth in emerging nation economies. Probably was inevitable at some point. And hopefully that slowdown doesn't go too far. At this point it's not, but just something to be aware of. And the issues in Europe are continuing in terms of their debt issues. These are just Global Insight's forecasts for gross domestic product growth this year and the next 2 years, 1.5, 2.7, and 3.5%. You can see that that's indicating that they see that there will be a pickup of the national economy. And then that translates into what we see here in state government in terms of our revenues. As I talked about in the last fiscal year, our revenue collections actually came in a little bit above average. Prior to the passage of the budget, when the legislature was considering the budget, we were looking at revenue growth rates of 2.1 and 3.6%. So you can see how that gross domestic product growth at the national level translates into revenue growth at the state level. Now, after the budget was passed, our growth rates won't be as high because some of what was done in the budget was to reduce taxes, which will mean even while the economy is expanding, we won't be collecting as much more in taxes because some of the revenues that we would otherwise get are being used to help put those tax cuts in place. But the point is that we're seeing not only projected growth in terms of the economy at the national level, that's translating into growth at the state level and growth in revenues for state government, local governments as well. So that's kind of the economic overview. I'll just touch on a couple of topics quickly before I end, kind of going back to those goals I talked about at the start of the presentation. One of our goals is to provide good customer service, and we're trying to do lots of different things to help in that area. We launched a new website in December of 2011 to make it easier for people to access information. We've actually gotten some national recognition for doing a great job on that, and other revenue departments have actually asked us for advice on improving their own websites. We've got a plain language initiative underway to systematically rewrite all of our forms and publications and notices so that they're more easily understandable by people. We know it's frustrating when people get a letter from a government agency and it's just several paragraphs of really dense text. So we're trying to break things up, put things in bullet point form and under headings that make it easier for people to understand. I've mentioned our customer call center. That received a significant upgrade in roughly 2008, about 5 years ago, and we've tried to keep it to where we have, we think, a state-of-the-art customer call center. We monitor wait times, we monitor people's satisfactions with the responses, to try to make sure we're doing a good job answering the inquiries we get from people who call in. We're putting as many services as possible online. We launched a service a couple of years ago called My Tax Account to allow businesses to manage their tax dealings with the state in one place, in one account. And we've done some things working with practitioners in the private sector to work to streamline the audit process when businesses go through tax audits. We're trying to make that shorter, more efficient. That helps us use our resources better. It helps the businesses that are being audited. And finally, another goal I talked about was operating efficiently, and I sometimes get the question, people say, hey, my business has been doing more with less, we've been getting the job done with fewer resources, or my nonprofit organization has been becoming more efficient. Are you doing that at the state level? This just shows over the last period of time from starting in 2001, we've been actually steadily reducing the size of the Department of Revenue. We're We've reduced positions by about 16% over that period of time, while still improving our performance in terms of things like responding to customer inquiries, the time it takes to process tax returns, the results we see from working to collect delinquent taxes, things like that. We've been improving our performance on those key measures, but doing it with fewer people, just by trying to become more efficient, make greater use of technology, and so forth. So I'll end my remarks there. This just gives you a few places to go for more information if you want any, but I certainly would encourage people who in particular have issues that you're interested in from the business point of view. If you're thinking of expanding a business here, you know, a business that's interested in relocating, if you've got tax questions about what kinds of incentives might be available, look on our webpage or give us a call. Certainly call the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation if you're interested in other non-tax incentives that might be available to businesses. We really want people to call up and ask, hey, what can the state do to help my business, to make the state a little better place to do business. And certainly there are resources such as the Chamber and other organizations at the local level who can help with that. So there are a number of things out there. Maybe sometimes they can be not the easiest to find all the things, but if you've got any questions, just call and we'll try to make sure people get connected to the people they should be connected with. So, Karen, I'll end my remarks there and open it up for questions, comments, and so forth.
Yes, in your slide before, you said the state had a $600 million surplus. Does that account for the prior administration, of course, rated the Patients Compensation Fund $250 million and the high transportation funds? Does that represent payback of those also?
Yes, the basic answer is yes. The Patients Compensation Fund, that money has been returned to the fund. There was a payment that we owed to the state of Minnesota under our tax reciprocity agreement that we hadn't made. That payment has been made. There have been some things done in the transportation area so that money from the state's general fund has been directed back to the transportation fund to offset the transfers that were made that you talked about back in 2009 and prior budgets.
So in essence,
So that
$600
represents
really
having taken care of all those issues. There aren't looming liabilities out there that need to be taken into account. Yeah.
I have a question. Governor Walker took office. I remember a statement he had said a more frugal and smaller government. But overall, we've seen expenditures still continue to grow above the rate of inflation. Via your last slide, you said you reduced your workforce by 16%. I guess for the Department of Revenue, is there a goal? What is the goal to reduce it in the next 2 to 3 years so we can start seeing not only that frugal government, which I think we have all seen, but now reducing the size of overall government?
Yeah, it's I guess the question basically touches on not just in terms of workforce, but in terms of spending on operations and other government programs, what's happening. And I think the answer is a little bit of a multi-part answer, but a lot of programs and probably the majority of agencies in state government are spending at levels below what they previously spent at. So our operating budget has actually, I can't remember the specifics exactly, but it was reduced in the 2011 budget bill. So it went down and then stayed relatively flat in the current budget bill. State spending overall there's a couple of programs that are seeing increases, that are continuing to see increases. The biggest one is the Medicaid program. It's probably no secret to people here who are in business and wrestling with health care costs. Where that impacts the state is in the Medicaid program. Now, we've done some things in terms of changing the way the program operates that have slowed the rate of increase, but it still has gone up. So when you look at the state's budget overall, it's gone up because of more spending in Medicaid, and in this budget, as I indicated, we put more money into K-12 school aids, more money into technical colleges, and more money into several other priority areas, while spending on state operations, for the most part, was being reduced. In the prior budget, spending had been reduced in just about every area except Medicaid. But as the budget situation improves, I guess the feeling was that there's a lot of people who would like to see a little bit more money for their K-12 schools, their technical colleges. So there have been increases there, while some of the things, I guess, that where people say, hey, we hope you can get more efficient, we have been getting more efficient at those.
Do you have, follow-up, do you have, in the DOR specifically, do you have incentives for, let's say, a manager or personnel to come up with ideas to help save money, help save time? And could you give us some examples of those?
Yeah, I guess we don't have specific monetary incentives in terms of, if you do this program, you'll get, if you have this suggestion, you'll get a share of the savings or something like that, if that's the question. But under the Walker administration, we've implemented performance recognition awards. They're called discretionary merit compensation awards. So we now give one-time awards to a limited number of employees each year, and it's basically the best performers, so that if somebody does come up with a good suggestion, they can get one of those discretionary merit compensation awards. We've also, just in terms of the work environment, we try to emphasize to people, hey, give us suggestions about how we can improve things. And if somebody has a good suggestion, we'll put together a team or see whether it's feasible. And so we try to get people to contribute the ideas that way, and then the recognition can come through the discretionary merit compensation award process.
Thank you.
Let's see, now we're playing back there.
Is the threshold still 100 for, to go to the large business? So you referenced small business, large business, typically it's been 99, and then there's small business, 100 and over is large business. Is that still the threshold? Because I've heard that might be changing to 250.
Yeah, you know what, I can't remember all of the specific definitions, and different programs have different definitions. So I can't remember the specifics, but we could, if you send us an email, we can tell you what it is for the different types of programs.
If the state has paid/repaid the Fed with regard to unemployment, so that I get a credit instead of having to make up for it?
We're getting to a point where we're going to be able to do that. Senator Libam is in the back of the room, and he's done some work in this area to try to direct a little bit more money to the unemployment compensation fund so that we can get out of a deficit earlier. And I forget the term. There's a term that's used as to whether we're sort of in that penalty situation or not. But and I can't remember the exact timing, but it might be, is it early 2014 that we project we'll be out of deficit? I can't remember for sure.
If I can, I mean, you were to be receiving a special assessment again from the federal government.
That's what I was trying to think
The
of.
legislature, Governor Walker had committed state funds to that, so there will be no special assessment on businesses this fall. That'll be covered by the general tax dollars, $30 million. State money was invested in the budget, so you're not going to get that secondary hit. And actually, you're going to get 2 more years of hits and you won't get that, so it's covered.
Maybe a small contentious area is relationship to local government, as you've indicated in the last 2 budgets, with provisions to hold the line on property taxes, but also some actions to help, with that change. Shared revenues. What do you forecast? You showed some forecasts globally as well as at the state with increased, GDP, et cetera. What do you see with shared revenues?
The question is about shared revenues, which are the revenues the state sends to local governments in particular. One of the things I guess a lot of people don't realize about the state government is that in in terms of our general fund budget, which is around $14 billion a year, about 60% of that spending isn't spent at the state level, but is sent back to school districts and local governments. K-12 schools is the biggest share of that, but then cities, villages, towns, counties, technical colleges all get significant shares of state aid. And over the past, probably this is a 2-decade-long trend, school aids have been going up, but shared revenues to cities, villages, towns, and counties have been either flat or sometimes dropping. So the question is, do we see a time when shared revenues will increase? And in this last budget bill, they were relatively flat. And I guess it's just really hard to predict as to whether things will be flat or whether there might be some opportunity for increases in the future.
Thank you very much.